The story begins with a cascade of pale pink cherry blossoms fills the air, drifting through a luminous haze that softens the world into a romantic reverie, where a man's voice cuts through the silence with a desperate plea for a woman to become his lover. The name, Haru, is whispered with intense longing as the visual reveals a uniformed man holding a woman close in a protective, intimate embrace, their figures framed by the falling petals and the golden light of a sun-drenched afternoon. The scene abruptly shifts from this dreamlike fantasy to the dimly lit, heavy atmosphere of a fortune-teller's shop known as the House of Divination, where Haru sits across from a hooded figure whose face is obscured by a veil. The fortune-teller delivers a crushing verdict, stating flatly that at her current rate, Haru will likely never manage to secure a proper boyfriend. Haru stammers in denial, her face flushing with embarrassment, but the diviner continues to inspect the palm of her hand with a ruthless, analytical gaze. The hooded figure strikes a nerve when she asserts that Haru has never truly experienced love, a statement that causes Haru to freeze as she realizes the assessment is spot on. The diviner's insight pierces through Haru's defenses, leaving her shocked and vulnerable, though a small part of her skepticism notes that such a vague line could apply to almost anyone. Seizing upon Haru's vulnerability, the fortune-teller transitions immediately into a sales pitch, presenting a small box containing a rough, unpolished stone. She names the price at a staggering 30,000 yen per stone, advising Haru that she should purchase this happiness stone to change her grim fate. Haru stares at the stone, her internal monologue warring between the exorbitant cost and her desperate desire for change. She suspects the woman might actually believe her own nonsense, but Haru is also acutely aware of the fake reviews that plague social media regarding such places. She recalls hearing that this specific House of Divination is notorious for shady business practices, yet the seed of doubt about her future has been planted deep. The fortune-teller leans in, her eyes visible through the veil, and whispers mystically that the stone only reveals its true power to those who have been chosen. This final push breaks Haru's resistance, and she stammers out her agreement to buy it, defeated by her own hope. As she exits the shop, clutching the bag, the shopkeeper bows and thanks her for her patronage, while Haru mentally cries over the expensive purchase. Behind her, the hooded woman ominously prophesies that Haru is destined to encounter someone truly special. The narrative transports the viewer to a vastly different setting, an opulent room with high ceilings and classical architecture, where a dark-haired man named Lord ELD sits in a chair. A blonde man named Finn stands attentively nearby, inquiring about ELD's condition. The hooded figure from the previous scene removes their veil to reveal a sharp, knowing smile, remarking that it is finally about to begin. ELD looks down at his own hand, observing that the curse mark has begun to spread rapidly across his skin. He admits to Finn that the situation is deteriorating and his condition is critical. A dark, traumatic memory violently surfaces in ELD's mind, depicting a terrifying sorceress with horns and a sadistic grin. The memory replays her hateful curse. She condemns him to suffer, declaring that if she cannot possess him, then no one will ever love him. The flashback reveals that there is only one specific method to break this malevolent bind. He must be loved by a healing soul, a rare individual capable of cleansing curses, but ELD laments that his own power is useless against this affliction. Finn, desperate to save his lord, suggests they try again with other young ladies, but ELD cuts him off, shouting that the outcome remains uncertain and grim. ELD resigns himself to the reality that he will likely die long before such a mythical, healing soul ever appears. Alone in the room, ELD stares at his reflection or perhaps just into the void, his body racked with pain. He examines the hideous, dark bruises spreading across his torso and neck, feeling an overwhelming fatigue settle into his bones. He touches his face, filled with self-loathing, asking himself who could ever possibly love someone with such a monstrous appearance. ELD closes his eyes, mentally preparing for the end, and entrusts the future to Finn should death claim him. Meanwhile, the narrative returns to the modern world where Haru stands before a large apartment complex, looking up at the sky. She clutches the stone, wondering aloud if this purchase will truly allow her to meet someone special. Inside her room, she sits on her bed, trying to convince herself to believe in the stone's power. However, intrusive memories of past relationships assault her mind. She hears the phantom voices of ex-lovers calling her an idiot and a convenient tool. She recalls the sting of being mocked for how easily she is fooled by a little kindness. Frustrated by her own gullibility, Haru shouts, "Enough!" and hurls the stone onto her bed, deciding to forget the entire ordeal. As the stone lands, she notices something strange. There is nothing there. She crawls across the bed to investigate, wondering what kind of stone it actually was. Suddenly, the air vibrates with a voice commanding awaken, and the stone reappears in her hand, emitting a piercing, blinding light. The intensity of the light overwhelms her senses, and she collapses onto the bed, falling into a deep slumber. Haru stirs, waking up to the sensation of soft linens, but as she sits up, she finds herself in a grand four-poster bed draped with sheer curtains. She looks around in bewilderment, realizing this is definitively not her room. She is still holding the rough stone she bought earlier, which anchors her to the memory of the previous day. The sensory details of the room are so vivid that she begins to question if this is a dream, feeling that it is all a little too real. Suddenly, the man beside her shifts, and Haru freezes as she realizes she is not alone. LD wakes up groggily, clutching his head, and immediately assumes that Finn has sent another woman to his bed in a futile attempt to break the curse. He mutters to himself that the curse will not be lifted, no matter how many women he sleeps with. Haru stares at the stranger, paralyzed by confusion. ELD moves with a predator's grace, looming over her, his shirt open to reveal the dark markings on his chest. ELD gazes down at her with cold apathy, deciding that since he is going to die anyway, he might as well indulge, as the outcome is the same regardless of his actions. He leans in close, causing Haru to panic and stammer. She frantically asks him to wait, her mind racing as she tries to convince herself she is dreaming. ELD pauses, observing her strange attire, and asks what country she is from, noting her unusual outfit. Haru stammers Japan, which seems to mean nothing to him. Haru asks him directly if this is a dream. ELD, perhaps sensing her fear or just weary of the situation, agrees with a cynical edge, stating that yes, it must be a dream because the reality of his condition is too awful to be anything else. He turns his back to her, revealing the full extent of the gruesome, spreading corruption on his skin. He assures her that the affliction is not contagious, so she has no need to worry about catching it. Instead of recoiling in horror as he expects, Haru looks at his back with wide, concerned eyes. She reaches out and touches the blackened skin, asking loudly if he is okay. ELD is stunned, telling her that sympathy doesn't work on this curse, but Haru is focused on his pain. She flusters, offering to put medicine on it, then apologizes profusely, fearing she pressed too hard and caused him pain. LD turns back to her, bewildered, and asks if she isn't afraid of the bruise. Haru meets his gaze and admits that while it looks painful and makes her nervous, it isn't scary, in the way he implies. She expresses a genuine hope that it heals quickly. LD stares at her, his eyes wide with shock at her unexpected reaction. He looks down at his chest where she touched him and notices a miraculous change. The bruise seems to have faded slightly, and the chronic pain has eased. He wonders in disbelief if the curse has actually weakened. Haru notices the change as well and excitedly suggests that maybe it is thanks to the stone she bought. LD inspects the stone she offers, dismissing it as a common magic stone that has lost all its power. However, his mind races with the possibility that Haru herself might be the cause. He looks at her hopeful, innocent expression and decides not to use the stone, resolving to keep it for now. He tells her that she can still be happy, trying to encourage her. Haru smiles, but then questions if it is strange to believe in such things, recalling how she was mocked in her own world. ELD looks at her with a gentle expression and tells her that he thinks she is amazing. He explains that continuing to believe isn't easy, and that most people protect their hearts by having no expectations. Therefore, he concludes, she is a strong person. Haru is struck by his words, tears welling up in her eyes as she processes the validation she has starved for. She apologizes for crying, but ELD leans in and wipes a tear from her cheek, telling her it is okay to cry. Haru thinks to herself that this is the first time a man has ever comforted her like this, reinforcing her belief that this must be a good dream. ELD introduces himself simply as ELD and asks for her name. Haru worries briefly that her eyes will swell if she cries more, but she gives him her name. ELD smiles, saying he is glad he could hear her name, though he adds somewhat sadly that surely they can only meet today. Haru agrees, resigning herself to the idea that since it is a dream, it can't be helped. ELD pulls her into a passionate embrace, his internal thoughts revealing a fierce determination not to let her go anywhere. He kisses her deeply, and Haru wonders if his intensity is because he is cursed, but she finds herself melting into the kiss. She thinks that this won't do, but ultimately decides to accept this convenient dream. ELD, however, is resolute, silently vowing to keep her. The scene dissolves into the bright light of morning, and Haru wakes up in her own bed in Japan. She feels physically light and emotionally full, thinking she never wanted to wake up from that dream. However, reality crashes back in as she realizes she is in her room and checks her smartphone. The screen reads 9:15 a.m., and she shrieks, realizing she is late for work at her black company, an exploitative employer. She imagines her boss screaming at her and panics. In her haste, she notices her phone has no signal, displaying out of service. She dismisses it and rushes to her front door, needing to get to work immediately. She flings the door open, expecting the hallway of her apartment building, but instead steps directly into a sunlit, ornate corridor of a palace. 2 guards in uniform stare at her in shock. Haru, still in her work mindset, frantically asks them if there is a subway station nearby. The guards look at each other in confusion, asking what a subway is. They quickly realize she is the girl who just came out of Lord ELD's room and become suspicious, noting they haven't seen her around before. One guard suggests she is a suspicious person and that they should detain her. The situation escalates rapidly as they accuse her of speaking nonsense and possibly being a foreign prostitute or spy. Their tone turns predatory as they suggest she entertain them a little before they arrest her. Haru screams in terror and bolts past them, running desperately down the corridor. She spots a large set of double doors leading to the outside and bursts through them. She runs onto a wide stone balcony and skids to a halt, her breath catching in her throat. Before her lies a breathtaking vista of a fantasy city, complete with soaring spires, castles, and architecture that is undeniably not Japan. She stands frozen, the reality of her situation crashing down on her. The guards catch up to her, drawing their swords with lethal intent. They shout for her to be arrested and threaten to cut her down if she resists. Haru backs away toward the stone railing, terrified by the realization that she faces either violation by the guards or death by their swords. She thinks of her regrets, unwilling to die like this. The fortune-teller's words echo in her mind, "You will meet someone special." With no other escape route, Haru climbs onto the railing of the balcony. She remembers ELD's voice telling her she is a strong person. Clinging to that validation and the desire to see him again, she makes a desperate gamble. She looks down at the trees far below, hoping they might break her fall or that a miracle will happen, and she lets go. As she plummets through the air, a dark figure swoops down with incredible speed. Strong arms catch her mid-fall, and a familiar voice scolds her, asking if he didn't say he wouldn't let her go anywhere. Haru opens her eyes to see ELD holding her in a princess carry. He grips the side of the castle wall, defying gravity, and tells her to hold on tight. With superhuman agility, he scales the wall, leaping upward with Haru secure in his arms. ELD lands gracefully back on the balcony, where Finn and the shocked guards are waiting. Finn claps his hands in amusement, remarking that carrying someone while climbing up the wall is exactly what he expects from Lord ELD. ELD ignores the praise and immediately asks Haru if she is all right. Haru stammers a yes, still recovering from the fall. Finn addresses ELD as the strongest knight commander, but ELD corrects him, stating he should add former to that title, as he is just a humble lord these days. ELD then turns his attention to the guards, his expression darkening into a terrifying glare. He condemns them for drawing swords on a lone woman, calling their behavior barbaric. The guards tremble in fear as Finn steps forward, offering to handle the punishment for the 2 men. The guards try to defend themselves, shouting that the woman is a suspicious person. ELD completely ignores their protests and turns his full attention to Haru. He looks at her with intense, burning eyes, causing her to blush. He declares firmly that she is not just somebody. Haru is confused, asking why he would say that when they just met. He interrupts her thoughts, stating simply and powerfully, "I need you, Haru." He pulls her closer, his hand gently touching her face, and tells her that he wants her to stay by his side. When she hesitates, confused by the speed of events, he leans in and delivers the ultimatum that brings the narrative full circle to the opening scene. With unwavering conviction, Lord ELD asks Haru to become his lover. Framed within an ornate, Gothic border of intertwined vines and pillars, the narrative resumes with a portrait of intimacy and tension. Lord ELD, his dark hair sweeping over his forehead and his expression possessive, holds Haru close. His gloved hand presses firmly against her shoulder, anchoring her to him, while Haru looks out with a flushed face, her eyes wide with a mixture of innocence and overwhelming emotion. This visual preamble sets the stage for the confrontation that follows immediately after the balcony rescue. The scene snaps back to the present reality, focusing on ELD's face, which is etched with a serious, unyielding desire. The sparkle of the atmosphere contrasts with the gravity of his words as he repeats the ultimatum that hung in the air previously. He gazes downward, his eyes heavy-lidded and intense, and articulates his demand clearly. He wants her to become his lover. Haru recoils slightly, her face exploding in a blush that reaches her ears. She stammers, completely caught off guard by the directness of the request, and asks why he is being so sudden. Her hands come up defensively, hovering near his chest as she struggles to process the rapid escalation of their relationship. Before ELD can press his advantage, the moment is interrupted by a sharp interjection from the side. Finn, the blonde aide who had previously offered to punish the guards, steps into the frame with a look of urgent inquiry. He addresses ELD, pleading for him to wait, but his attention quickly pivots to the woman in his lord's arms. Finn adjusts his monocle, his expression shifting from concern to analytical awe as he asks if she truly possesses a soul capable of healing others. He refers to her as Lady Haru, elevating her status instantly. ELD confirms this without hesitation, his arms still securely around Haru. He states flatly that there is no doubt about it, she is actively purifying his curse. Haru, trapped between the two men, looks back and forth in confusion, asking what they are talking about. The terms, soul that heals, and curse, fly over her head, deepening her bewilderment. The narrative shifts to a scene of realization and displacement. Haru stares at a parchment map spread out on a desk, her eyes trembling with rising panic. The visual reveals a geography that is utterly alien. The continents are misshapen lumps of land that bear no resemblance to Earth. She scans the names and coastlines, her internal monologue spiraling as she searches desperately for a country called Japan. The crushing truth settles upon her. It does not exist here. She has been ice-guyed, transported to another world. The weight of this revelation is compounded by the mundane anxieties of her previous life. A small inset panel visualizes her smartphone screen, displaying the time as 9:15 and the signal bar crossed out. She realizes she has gone AWOL from her job at the Black Company, and the fear of her boss's wrath flickers through her mind even in this fantasy setting. She clutches the map, her knuckles white, and whispers a terrified question to the air. How is she supposed to get back? LD watches her from the side, his expression softening into a look of profound melancholy and empathy. He sees the distress radiating from her and moves to comfort her. In a gesture of gentle reassurance, he places his large, gloved hand on top of her head. He tells her not to worry, his voice steady and promising. He vows that they will definitely find a way for her to return home. Haru looks up at him, tears welling in the corners of her eyes, touched by his unexpected kindness. The atmosphere softens, the sparkles of the shoujo aesthetic returning as ELD leans in closer, his face inches from hers, and whispers that she doesn't have to cry. The tender moment is broken by Finn, who clears his throat or perhaps just steps forward to address the practicalities. He asks a favor of Lady Haru. He proposes that until a method for her return is discovered, she should remain and continue purifying Lord ELD's curse. Finn explains the gravity of the situation, revealing that he has confirmed the bruises on ELD's body have started to fade, a phenomenon that has never occurred before. Finn then delves into the dark history of the affliction. He recounts that 5 years ago, a witch named Zoe placed a malevolent curse on Lord ELD. The curse was specific and cruel. It would cover his body in hideous bruises and ensure that he died unloved. Haru listens, her expression shifting from sadness to shock as she comprehends the cruelty inflicted upon the man standing beside her. Finn continues his explanation, his face grave. He asserts that there is only one healing soul in the entire world capable of breaking this magic, and he points directly to Haru. The panel focuses on Haru's face, highlighting her flushed cheeks and wide, watery eyes as the burden of being the chosen one is placed squarely on her shoulders. She stammers, overwhelmed by the singularity of her existence in this world. ELD interrupts, sensing her distress, and tells her not to let it trouble her, trying to alleviate the pressure Finn is applying. Haru's mind flashes back to her life in Japan. A monochromatic memory panel depicts her standing between two shadowy figures, men from her past who mocked her. The text overlays recall their cruel words, "Haru is just a convenient tool," and "there are plenty of people who can take your place." The trauma of being replaceable and used gnaws at her. She looks at her own hands, then at ELD. In this world, she is not replaceable. She is the only one. This realization sparks a fire of determination within her. She clenches her fist and declares that she will do it. She resolves to purify ELD's curse, driven by the desire to finally be someone who matters, someone who can do something no one else can. Finn is overcome with emotion. He rushes forward and embraces Haru, or perhaps grabs her hands, tears streaming down his face behind his glasses. He thanks her profusely, his composure cracking under the relief of finding a savior for his lord. Haru is startled by his intensity, her eyes swirling with confusion at the sudden physical contact from the aide. Later, the scene transitions to a luxurious bedroom. LD stands by the window, while Haru looks around in awe. The room is spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and elegant furniture. LD offers the room to her, but Haru hesitates, asking if she is pushing herself too hard. She worries that accepting such luxury might obligate her further or that the task might be too dangerous. LD turns to her, his silhouette framed by the light, and states calmly that he doesn't mind if she refuses. He explains that he has no intention of making her life harder and doesn't want her to live merely as a tool for his survival. Haru looks at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. She blushes, realizing his consideration for her autonomy. She counters his offer, stating that she isn't pushing herself. She admits, somewhat shyly, that she is doing this because she feels needed. It validates her existence. She frames it as a win-win situation. She gets a place to belong, and he gets cured. She smiles, a genuine, bright expression that lights up the panel. LD watches her, a small, genuine smile touching his own lips as he remarks on how dependable she is. The narrative moves to the mechanics of the magic. Finn, or perhaps ELD, explains that while mere touch has a purifying effect, a kiss is significantly more potent. The panel visualizes the difference, implying that physical intimacy accelerates the healing process. LD, standing close to Haru, asks her what she wants to do. He lowers his voice, the tone shifting to seduction, and asks if she wants to give it a try, reminding her that they have already done it many times in the dream. Haru, flushed and trembling slightly, agrees. She closes her eyes, bracing herself. LD leans in, his hand coming up to cup her cheek, his gloved fingers contrasting with her pale skin. He kisses her. The panel zooms in on the contact, capturing the softness and the intensity of the moment. Haru's internal monologue reveals that, as she suspected, ELD's kiss feels incredible. It is a sensory overload that melts her resistance. LD pulls back slightly, his expression dazed and dark with desire. He thinks to himself that this is addictive. He tries to rationalize it as purification, but he knows he is enjoying it far too much. He berates himself internally, thinking he shouldn't be deriving such pleasure from a medical necessity. A time skip occurs, indicated by a change in Haru's attire. She is now dressed in a period-appropriate gown with frills and ribbons, looking every bit the noble lady. She sits in a library, surrounded by towering bookshelves, reading a book. She discovers to her surprise that she can read the letters of the world, implying the Isekai translation convention is in effect. She is studying purification, determined to learn more so she can cure ELD as quickly as possible. Her motivation is dual. She wants to save him, but she also admits to herself that her heart can't take the intensity of their purification kisses for much longer. She asks Finn where ELD is. Finn, looking formal, informs her that ELD has gone out. He reveals that ELD was summoned to the royal palace by Her Royal Highness, the princess. Haru is stunned. The mention of a princess summoning ELD triggers a pang of insecurity. She imagines a beautiful, regal woman and feels a sudden, sharp stab of jealousy. Finn continues, explaining that ELD and the princess are very close. Haru's imagination runs wild, picturing them together. She slumps, feeling heavy and discouraged. She mutters that she hates this feeling, the feeling of being down over something she has no right to be jealous about. She realizes she is sulking. Suddenly, the narrative cuts to the balcony/terrace area. ELD has returned. He is dressed in a formal vest and cravat, looking dashing. He finds Haru standing alone, looking out at the scenery. He apologizes for not being able to have a meal with her today. Haru turns, trying to hide her sullen mood, and asks if he ate at the palace. ELD confirms it was hard to refuse. ELD senses her mood immediately. He steps closer and asks if she has a moment. He invites her for a ride to change the mood, noting they can't go far. He leads her outside, where a magnificent carriage awaits. Haru's eyes widen in delight. She exclaims that she has never ridden in a carriage before. LD smiles at her reaction, charmed by her innocence. As he helps her into the carriage, his hand holding hers, he reveals that he heard from Finn that she was sulking because she couldn't ride the carriage earlier. Haru freezes, her face turning crimson. She realizes Finn misunderstood her jealousy as a childish desire to ride the vehicle. She stammers, trying to correct the misunderstanding, but stops herself. Admitting she was jealous of a princess would be even more embarrassing. Inside the carriage, Haru marvels at the luxury, the velvet seats, the curtains, the spaciousness. LD watches her, then drops a casual bombshell. He apologizes for the earlier topic, mentioning he had a sense of déjà vu because he had been dealing with a 5-year-old all day. Haru pauses. She asks him to repeat that. ELD clarifies that the princess turns 5 this year. Haru's entire demeanor shifts. She is flooded with relief, followed instantly by intense embarrassment. She realizes she was jealous of a toddler. She covers her face with her hands, mortified. ELD, oblivious to the depth of her internal conflict, continues to talk about the princess, mentioning she doesn't even understand the curse yet. ELD then shifts the conversation to Haru. He looks at her with a serious, tender expression. He tells her that he wants her to enjoy herself in this world. He doesn't want her to think she is only here for purification or as a tool. He wants her to find happiness here. Haru stares at him, her heart beating faster. She whispers that he shouldn't say things like that. ELD presses on, his gaze intensifying. He leans forward, closing the distance between them in the confined space of the carriage. He tells her he wants to make her think that way. Haru begs him to stop, her defenses crumbling. She admits internally, and then partially aloud, that if he keeps treating her this way, she might end up thinking he actually likes her. ELD doesn't pull back. Instead, he apologizes, not for the sentiment, but for the fear it causes her. He looks at her with a raw, vulnerable expression and confesses that he has long been attracted to her. The declaration hangs in the air, heavy and undeniable. Before Haru can process this, ELD closes the remaining distance. He captures her lips in another kiss, this one deeper and more desperate than the purification kiss. He holds her face, tilting her head back as they embrace on the carriage seat. Haru melts into him, calling his name breathlessly. ELD pulls back just enough to look into her eyes, his forehead resting against hers. He asks, with a mixture of hope and uncertainty, if it is all right if he likes her. Haru is left reeling, her mind a chaotic whirl of emotions. She thinks to herself that she has truly come to a crazy world, overwhelmed by the sudden, intense romance that has upended her life. A delicate portrait of Haru, framed by an abundance of baby's breath flowers that accentuate her gentle demeanor, her hands lifting her hair as a soft blush colors her cheeks. The scene shifts immediately to an intimate interior, where Lord ELD holds Haru securely upon his lap, his arm wrapped firmly around her waist while his other hand gently tilts her chin upward, their faces merely inches apart. Haru flushes deeply, her breath hitching in her throat as she stammers his name, overwhelmed by the proximity. ELD gazes at her with intense focus, prompting Haru to question the necessity of their position. She argues that a purification kiss does not require her to be seated upon his lap in such a compromising manner. ELD, unfazed by her embarrassment, simply asks if this arrangement presents a problem, his expression cool yet possessive. As he draws her even closer, his fingers caressing her cheek, he confesses that his motivation stems not from necessity, but from a simple, selfish desire to be as close to her as physically possible. Haru attempts to process this, reminding him that he had mentioned something similar before. ELD confirms this without hesitation, his eyes softening as he admits that his attraction to her has existed for a long time. He declares plainly that he is drawn to her, specifically to Haru, emphasizing her personal importance over her utility. Flustered, Haru acknowledges his previous admission but struggles to reconcile the intensity of his affection. She grapples with the concept of being special to him. ELD reiterates that she is indeed special, distinct from her role as a healing soul, causing Haru to wonder if his feelings truly stem from who she is as a person rather than her curative abilities. The intimate atmosphere is interrupted by the arrival of Finn, the butler, who enters the room with a formal letter in hand. Finn apologizes for the intrusion but requests a moment of their time to deliver a message. Haru scrambles off ELD's lap in a panic, trying to regain her composure while ELD remains seated, appearing slightly annoyed by the interruption. Finn presents an invitation to an evening soiree hosted by Count Abel, noting that the invitation specifically includes Lady Haru. Finn adds that he has a request regarding this matter. Haru envisions a stereotypical high society gathering, complete with dancing and high-ranking nobles, a world completely foreign to her. However, ELD's reaction is immediate and negative. His expression darkens as he recalls the specific nature of Count Abel. He explains that Abel lost his own lordship due to reckless spending and harbors hostility toward ELD. Protective instincts flaring, ELD refuses to let Haru attend such a place, fearing for her safety and dignity. Finn intervenes, suggesting a different strategy. He proposes that Haru attend the soiree alongside Lord ELD. Finn argues that if the nobility witnesses Haru's presence and her acceptance of ELD, the malicious rumors surrounding the cursed lord, who was abandoned by the healing soul, would dissipate. ELD remains obstinate, refusing to subject Haru to the gossip, preferring to let the rumors persist rather than risk her comfort. However, Haru interrupts, her resolve hardening as she considers Finn's logic. She realizes that her existence could aid ELD and counter the narrative that he is a cursed monster. With determination shining in her eyes, Haru declares that she will go to the soiree. She asserts that because she is the healing soul, her presence carries weight, and she wants to use that privilege to be useful to ELD. ELD looks at her, stunned by her courage and willingness to face a hostile crowd for his sake. The narrative transitions to the night of the soiree. They arrive at a grand, illuminated mansion, Haru dressed in an elegant gown with an off-the-shoulder neckline and a choker, while ELD wears a formal military-style dress coat with intricate embroidery. Before they enter, Haru compliments ELD, telling him he looks handsome. ELD returns the sentiment, praising her hairstyle and dress, and telling her she looks beautiful, which causes her to blush profusely. Despite her nervousness, Haru steels herself, promising to do her best until the rumors improve. ELD, sensing her anxiety, offers her an escape route, assuring her that if she ever wants to go home, she only needs to say the word. As they ascend the grand staircase, the whispers begin immediately. Guests exchange wary glances, identifying ELD as the cursed one. At the top of the stairs, they are intercepted by Count Abel, a man with a smug, malicious expression holding a wine glass. Abel greets them with veiled insults, noting that it is the first soiree in 5 years and feigning surprise that ELD is still alive. He remarks on the rudeness of showing up after receiving an invitation, despite clearly having sent it with the expectation that ELD would not come. ELD stares him down coldly. The atmosphere in the hall turns icy. Bystanders recoil, whispering about the ugliness of the marks on ELD's neck and face, voicing superstitious fears that the curse might be contagious. Haru freezes, shrinking under the weight of the collective hostility directed at them. Count Abel cruelly points out that no one is welcoming them. ELD leans in close to Haru, his voice calm, assuring her that he is accustomed to this treatment and that she should not worry. Haru looks at his profile, realizing the depth of the burden he has carried alone for all these years. A surge of protective defiance rises within her. She affirms internally that the curse is not contagious and that the marks will fade. She reminds herself of her identity as the healing soul and resolves to stay by his side. She understands that there is no need to worry because she is there with him, and she believes that her continued love for him will eventually purify the curse completely. Suddenly, the music changes. A melody fills the hall, and Haru recognizes it as Kyoku, a song composed by ELD himself. Her mood lifts instantly, the familiar tune acting as a beacon of comfort. Seizing the moment, ELD suggests they ignore the hostile crowd and excuse themselves to the dance floor. ELD extends his hand, formally inviting her to dance. He reveals that he has been practicing a bit, a charming admission that surprises Haru. He proposes that they focus on enjoying themselves and having fun before they leave, rather than retreating in discomfort. Haru agrees, realizing that leaving now would only validate the guest's malice. They step onto the floor. ELD leads with confidence, guiding Haru through the steps, instructing her on foot placement and turns. Haru stumbles slightly but quickly finds her rhythm under his guidance, noting that he is surprisingly skilled at dancing. As they move together, the world outside their embrace seems to fade. ELD smiles at her, a genuine, tender expression that contrasts sharply with the cold mask he wore earlier. Haru beams back, thanking him. The dance becomes more intimate. ELD pulls her closer, and they gaze into each other's eyes, oblivious to the onlookers. The crowd's whispering shifts in tone. The guests begin to notice the genuine connection between the two. They remark on how much fun the couple seems to be having and how well they suit each other. The malice turns to curiosity, with some speculating that the healing soul rumors might be true after all. After the dance concludes, Haru is flushed and breathless, admitting she danced a bit too much. She decides to cool down on the balcony while ELD goes to retrieve drinks for them. Alone on the terrace, Haru enjoys the night air until the click of heels on the stone floor signals an arrival. A woman in a dark, ornate dress approaches her, asking if she is the healing soul. The woman's demeanor is arrogant and confrontational. She warns Haru not to get too full of herself. She reveals that she was once a candidate to be Lord ELD's fiancée and claims that if not for the curse, she would be his wife by now. The woman attempts to intimidate Haru by alluding to a shared past, claiming she cannot forget the passionate nights she spent with Lord ELD. Haru is shocked by this revelation. The woman continues her verbal assault, demanding that Haru give Lord ELD back once the curse is lifted. She insinuates that Haru is merely a temporary tool, a utility for breaking the curse, and that once the creepy curse disappears, ELD will no longer have any use for her. She sneers that Haru is unwanted and that anyone could see that. Haru wavers for a moment but then anchors herself in the memories of ELD's words. She recalls him telling her that even without her powers, he is drawn to her simply because she is Haru. She remembers his validation of her positive thinking and the kindness she showed him when they first met. She holds on to the belief that she is special and dearly beloved by him, gaining strength from his past reassurances. Haru faces the woman and states firmly that she, too, deeply admires Lord ELD. Before the confrontation can escalate, a hand reaches out from the shadows. It is ELD. He questions the woman, asking if what she said is true. The woman freezes, terrified, as ELD steps into the light. He asks coldly if she hadn't previously called him a monster. The woman turns and flees in a panic, crying out that she is being drained, suggesting ELD's presence or power is actively repelling her malice. ELD turns his attention immediately to Haru, checking if she is okay. Haru thanks him for saving her, but ELD dismisses the gratitude, apologizing for arriving late. He acknowledges that the woman must have said terrible things to her. Haru, however, smiles and rubs her cheek against his hand, telling him that his words made her happy and that she is fine. ELD reiterates that Haru is special, not just because she is a healing soul, implying that her virtues deserve even more praise than she receives. Haru then tentatively brings up the woman's claims. She asks if the woman was indeed a fiancé candidate from a long time ago. ELD confirms this but dismisses it as ancient history. Haru presses further, unable to hide her distress. She apologizes for being rude but asks about the passionate nights the woman claimed to have spent with him. Her voice trembles as she asks if he loved that woman more than he loves her. ELD looks at her, processing the absurdity of the question, and then realizes what is happening. He leans in, his face close to hers, and asks if she is jealous on his behalf. He kisses her deeply, silencing her doubts. Pulling back, he tells her that the woman's claims are impossible and denies loving anyone more than Haru. Haru persists, repeating the phrase, passionate nights, that the woman used. ELD smiles mischievously. He tells Haru that if she is worried about that, she simply needs to spend more passionate nights with him to supersede any past claims. Haru is flustered by the implication. ELD explicitly invites her to the bedroom tonight, promising to demonstrate exactly what a passionate night entails. The narrative closes with Haru blushing furiously as the implication of his invitation sinks in. ELD's striking elegance and dark intensity dominates the view, his presence commanding the crimson backdrop that frames him. He wears a pristine white shirt unbuttoned to reveal his chest, contrasting with the heavy, gold-embroidered black coat draped casually over his shoulders. A black glove encases his hand as he raises it to his lips, teeth grazing the leather in a gesture that blends contemplation with seduction, while his sharp gaze pierces forward. Haru stands frozen in a corridor, her face flushed and her hand clutching the fabric of her dress over her heart. The memory of a deep, commanding voice echoes in her mind, replaying the demand that she spend a hot night with him. She lingers before a set of ornate double doors, her mind racing to decipher the intent behind those words. Her imagination betrays her, suggesting that a hot night implies acts of a lewd nature, sending a fresh wave of heat through her cheeks. Steeling herself, she pushes the heavy door open, stepping into the space that separates her from him. Inside the dimly lit room, ELD leans against the wall by a tall window, his posture radiating a restless energy. His shirt hangs open, revealing dark, shadowy markings that mar the skin of his chest and neck, evidence of the affliction he bears. He fixes his gaze upon her, questioning the duration of her hesitation and asking how long she intends to remain consumed by worry. He voices the request that hangs between them, asking if she will stay with him until the morning light breaks. Haru stands before him, uncertainty etched into her features as she processes his request. ELD watches her, his expression unreadable, waiting to see what course of action she will choose. She breathes his name, Mr. LD, her voice trembling slightly as she confronts the reality of the situation. LD reaches out, his hand, darkened by the corruption, moving to graze her hair and ear. Haru flinches violently at the contact, her eyes shutting tight as her body instinctively recoils. The reaction arrests ELD's movement instantly, his eyes widen in shock, reflecting the hurt of her rejection. He pulls his hand back, the dark stains on his skin stark against the light, and apologizes, admitting that his control slips when he is in her presence. He lowers his gaze, a shadow of remorse crossing his face as he confesses that he went too far. He turns his face away, shielding himself from her view as shame colors his words. He speaks of forgetting his own ugliness, the corruption that marks him, and instructs her to rest well in the safety of her own room. He offers a final apology for frightening her, his voice heavy with resignation. Haru's eyes widen, and she steps forward, desperation seizing her voice. She shouts that he has misunderstood, denying his assumption that fear drove her reaction. Her denial hangs in the air, halting his retreat. She lowers her head, her fingers clutching her dress as she stammers out the truth of her hesitation. She admits to her lack of experience, revealing that no one has ever desired more than a simple kiss from her before. Her heart pounds against her ribs, the rhythm frantic and loud in the quiet room. She confesses that her nervousness stems not from fear of him, but from the magnitude of the moment, as he would be her first. She looks up at him, her eyes shimmering with vulnerability as she speaks his name. LD stares at her, the revelation shifting the atmosphere between them. A mixture of surprise and intensified desire crosses his features. He murmurs that she is making the situation difficult for him by admitting such a thing. He reaches out again, this time gently lifting her chin with his darkened fingers, forcing her to meet his gaze. He questions aloud what he is supposed to do with this new knowledge, realizing that his initial plan to distance himself is no longer viable. He acknowledges the shift, accepting the inevitable pull between them. His gaze intensifies, locking onto hers with a predatory focus. He warns her that if they proceed, he will reach a point where he will not want to release her back to her room. The threat is soft but absolute, a declaration of his waning restraint. Haru meets his gaze, her resolve hardening even as her breath hitches. ELD moves closer, the space between them vanishing as he declares his intent to touch her more. He pulls her into an embrace, his lips descending to capture hers while his hands begin to roam. Haru's head falls back, a soft sound escaping her throat as his hand slides the fabric of her dress down her shoulder. He exposes her skin to the cool air and his heated touch, his blackened hand contrasting with her pale flesh. He whispers against her skin, wondering aloud how far he can go. He admits that he will not be able to stop himself if she does not offer resistance. LD kisses her deeply, his eyes half closed as he drinks in her response. He pulls back slightly to gaze at her flushed face, whispering that she is cute. Haru gasps, her eyes misting over as the sensation of his lips and hands overwhelms her senses. She trembles under his ministrations, her thoughts scattering. She manages to articulate that if he touches her in such a way, she will be undone. LD continues to hold her, his dark hair falling over his forehead as he presses her back, his hand cupping her breast. Haru cries out his name, her voice breaking as she surrenders to the wave of pleasure. LD hovers over her, his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that burns. Haru stares up at him, her vision filled with his face, and in the clarity of the moment, she realizes the truth of her heart. The words form in her mind and spill from her lips. She loves him. The realization cascades through her mind, cementing the truth that she is seriously falling for Mr. ELD. She acknowledges the impossibility of resistance in the face of such overwhelming affection. She feels the depth of his love and the fulfillment it brings, her body and soul reacting to his proximity. She accepts that she is falling in love. Their lips meet again, the kiss deepening, becoming a seal on her silent confession. Suddenly, a brilliant light erupts from the point of their contact, bathing them in an ethereal glow. LD jolts back, his body arching as a shockwave of sensation tears through him. He grits his teeth, his face contorted in a mix of pleasure and confusion. He exclaims that the sensation feels far too good, surpassing anything he anticipated. He realizes that her purification power has surged abruptly, flooding him with a cleansing energy. He looks down at her, bewildered by the sudden spike in magical potency. Haru sits up, clutching the sheet to her chest, equally confused by the event. She questions why her purification power suddenly grew in intensity. LD sits opposite her, his breathing heavy, the sweat glistening on his skin. Haru recalls the mechanics of the magic, remembering that the method of purification functions through a healing soul. A realization strikes her, causing her eyes to widen in horror and embarrassment. She deduces that the power surged because she felt intense love for him in that moment. The strength of the purification is directly correlated to the strength of her feelings. LD inspects his arm and chest, noting the physical changes. The dark, corrupted markings that previously marred his skin are receding, fading into nothingness. He remarks that the corruption is calming down, validating the effectiveness of the surge. Haru watches him, mortified, realizing that the effectiveness of the magic has inadvertently exposed the depth of her feelings to him. Panic seizes her. She scrambles off the bed, clutching her clothes to her body. She announces frantically that she is returning to her room, unable to face the vulnerability of her exposed heart. LD remains on the bed, shirtless and stunned, watching her abrupt departure with wide eyes. Haru flees, her mind racing with the implications of what just occurred. Safe in the hallway, or perhaps back in her room, Haru leans against a surface, sliding down as the adrenaline fades. She is mortified, burying her face in her hands. She acknowledges that she has seriously fallen for someone in another world, a complication she had not foreseen. She realizes she had been oblivious to the depth of her own feelings until this very moment. The joy of love clashes with the somber reality that she must eventually return to her own world. Haru gazes up at Mr. LD, her heart swelling with an affection she can no longer suppress, mesmerized by the kindness in his eyes and the soothing timbre of his low, calm voice. She realizes that from the very moment their paths crossed, she viewed him as wonderful, and now, that admiration has deepened into undeniable love. However, this surge of romantic emotion triggers a dangerous reaction within her. Her purification powers, linked directly to the intensity of her feelings, begin to expand and spiral out of control. Panic sets in as she understands the implications of this magical flare-up. She retreats internally, terrified that if she purifies him again, the sheer magnitude of the power will expose the depth of her feelings to him. A somber realization anchors her fluctuating emotions. She belongs to another world and must eventually return, making this attachment a tragedy in the waiting. She laments that it would have been safer, cleaner, to never have fallen in love at all. LD, sensing her sudden withdrawal and inner turmoil, leans in with concern, asking if something is troubling her. The proximity of his face flusters Haru, and as he closes the distance, she realizes with a jolt that they are on the verge of kissing. She panics, overwhelmed by the intimacy, while ELD whispers her name. The moment is broken, and in the days that follow, Haru actively avoids him to prevent another magical mishap. 3 days later, ELD corners her, asking point-blank if she is avoiding him. Haru attempts to deny it, but her internal monologue betrays her fear that physical contact will trigger her purification powers again. She stammers that she hasn't touched him since that night, but quickly pivots, claiming she just needs time to calm down. ELD, ever the gentleman, apologizes immediately, explaining that he only approached her because she seemed worried and he didn't mean to cause her distress. Seeking to alleviate her evident stress, ELD suggests they leave the confines of the mansion. He proposes a walk to clear her head, offering to show her around his territory. Haru agrees, and they venture into the town, which is bustling with life and vibrant energy. The market is a sensory delight for Haru, who marvels at fruits that do not exist in her native Japan. ELD watches her curiosity with amusement as she stops at a food stall. She points excitedly to a skewered treat that resembles a rice cake, noting its similarity to mochi. She takes a bite, delighted by the familiar deliciousness, while ELD chuckles softly at her enthusiasm. Haru steals a glance at ELD, finding peace in his relaxed demeanor. She notes how happy she feels seeing him smile, observing that he speaks so casually now, a stark contrast to his previous tension. ELD interrupts her reverie by pointing out a shop specializing in magic stones. Inside, they examine a display of colorful gems. ELD explains that while these stones contain magical power, they are weak, functioning more like charms than potent artifacts. Haru, curious about the mechanics of this world, asks if ordinary people possess magic. ELD clarifies that magic is typically a trait reserved for royalty, and it is rare for normal citizens to wield it. Haru's attention is captured by a specific blue stone, remarking on how beautiful it is and how perfectly it matches the color of ELD's eyes. As they continue their stroll, the villagers take notice of their lord's presence. Whispers ripple through the crowd. The fear that once surrounded ELD and his curse has evaporated, replaced by curiosity about whether he is on a date. The locals observe that everyone has been talking about this change. ELD notices Haru's flustered reaction to the gossip and asks if she is shy, but their conversation is interrupted by a child's cry. A young boy has lost his balloon, which floats high above the rooftops, far beyond reach. The child wails that the balloon cannot be retrieved. Without a moment's hesitation, ELD tells Haru to wait and launches himself into motion. Utilizing his supernatural agility, he bounds across the rooftops, chasing the drifting balloon. He catches it midair and descends gracefully, returning it to the grateful child. The villagers erupt in admiration, praising their lord for his dependability and recalling how his repairs on the bridge also helped them greatly. The women in the crowd comment on how a good lord is always loved by his people, admiring his popularity. They note that while they knew the curse wasn't contagious, the atmosphere around ELD used to be grim. Now, however, the town is cheerful and ELD laughs frequently. They shrewdly attribute this transformation to Haru's influence, recognizing that he is happy because she is by his side. Walking back as the day winds down, Haru silently hopes that ELD can continue to smile like this forever. The villagers' observations ring true to her. She has never seen him make such a gentle expression before. She struggles to maintain her composure, feeling the weight of his affection and her own reciprocating love. ELD suddenly stops her, signaling the end of their outing. He tells her that today was fun, but he has something he wants to give her. He produces a necklace featuring the blue stone she admired earlier. Haru is stunned, recognizing it immediately as the gem that matched his eyes. ELD asks her to wear it for him, his voice tinged with vulnerability. He admits that he thought giving her something that represents his eye color might be excessive or too much, but he selfishly wants her to think of him whenever she wears it. He steps closer, the atmosphere thickening with intimacy, and leans in to kiss her. Panic overtakes Haru again. She places her gloved hand against his chest, stopping him with a breathless refusal. ELD looks at her, confused and hurt, as she pulls away. Haru, overwhelmed, breaks down in tears, admitting that she can no longer suppress her feelings. She confesses that she loves him, but the admission is painful because she knows the inevitable separation looms. She tried so hard to stay calm, but his kindness has shattered her defenses. Through her tears, she tells him it is no use. She feels the same way about him. ELD is stunned by the confession. Haru explains the source of her despair. Even though she loves him, she must someday return to her original world. She believes she has to give up on their relationship. ELD, however, refuses to accept this fatalistic view. He pulls her into a firm embrace, declaring that he will not give up on her. He vows that if she must return to her world, he will go with her. Haru looks at him in disbelief, questioning if such a feat is possible. ELD reveals that he did not sit idly by. He researched the phenomenon in the royal archives. He discovered records of a person who came from another world 500 years ago. According to the legends, that traveler fell in love with a prince of this world, and the two of them departed to the other world together. ELD argues that if it happened before, it is worth investigating how they achieved it. He apologizes for not telling her sooner, explaining that he wanted to wait until he had more concrete research, but her distress forced his hand. Haru is awestruck by his dedication and the realization that there might be hope for them after all. Buoyed by this new possibility, Haru realizes it might be okay to keep loving him. She resolves to stop hiding her heart. Facing him, she attempts to say, "I love you," properly without the veil of tears or panic. She begins to speak the words, her voice steadying. Suddenly, the air around her begins to warp. Feathers and particles of light materialize, surrounding her body as she begins to fade from existence. ELD stares, confused, asking if she said something, only to realize she is vanishing before his eyes. A mysterious, mocking voice echoes through the space, declaring, "No fair," and stating that ELD cannot keep her all to himself. The voice announces, "I'll be taking my little Haru now," as she completely disappears. ELD is left standing alone in the empty street, screaming her name in horror. The silence as a figure resolves never to surrender Haru. In a lush, sun-dappled forest, a scene of intimacy unfolds where a figure in dark, regal attire embraces a woman in a white dress, their hands clasping near her waist against the backdrop of ancient trees and filtering light. The man, possessing dark hair and intense features, holds the woman close, his gaze fixed upon her with a mixture of possession and tenderness as she rests in his arms. The scene shifts abruptly from the serene forest to an opulent interior, where Haru finds herself seated on the floor, looking up in bewilderment at a towering figure standing before her. The stranger welcomes her to his villa, his presence commanding the space as Haru stammers, questioning his identity while gazing at his polished boots. He addresses her familiarly as Miss Haru, indicating he already knows who she is. Haru stares up at the young man, who introduces himself with a flourish. He reveals his identity as Leo Baltia, the first prince of the country, a revelation that causes Haru to question if he is royalty. Leo stands confidently in a decorated military-style uniform, explaining the method of her arrival. He utilized his own magic to kidnap her, a feat he admits to with a casual, almost playful demeanor. To demonstrate the potency of his abilities, he gestures toward a small wooden bird on the floor, animating it with a glowing aura. He boasts that because he is royalty, he possesses exceptionally strong magical powers, strong enough to create life from wood. He leans in, his expression shifting to one of intrigue, and admits he has been interested in Haru for quite some time. Leo leans closer, his face filling Haru's view, and confesses that he has been observing her, wondering about her nature. He acknowledges her origins, noting that she came from another world and is responsible for healing ELD's curse. Haru, flustered and humble, averts her gaze, insisting she is not anyone special. Leo rests his chin in his hand, smiling charmingly as he continues his scrutiny, claiming he has been curious about her for a while. Haru attempts to deny his praise, appearing uncomfortable with the attention. The conversation turns to her current predicament, and Haru's thoughts immediately drift to ELD, worrying that he might be concerned about her absence by now. She attempts to excuse herself, stating she needs to tell him later, but acknowledges the problem her disappearance causes. Leo, dismissing her concerns with a wave of his hand, abruptly proposes a solution. They should simply start living together in his villa starting today. Haru recoils, immediately rejecting the absurd offer with a firm apology. She bows her head low on the floor in a posture of deferential refusal. Leo appears unfazed, almost amused by her refusal, while Haru smiles nervously, expressing her desire to stay by ELD's side. Leo's expression darkens slightly as he questions why his status as a prince isn't enough to sway her. He leans in, his gaze intensifying, and dismisses her reasoning, stating that it doesn't matter. Haru remains firm, though polite, insisting on her choice. Leo pauses, his confident mask slipping for a moment as he processes her rejection, noting that it is the first time someone has spoken to him in such a way. He touches his neck, looking away with a flushed, contemplative expression. Sensing the shift in atmosphere, Haru decides it is time to leave and awkwardly announces her intention to head back. She stands, moving toward the door, but pauses when she realizes her words might have been disrespectful to royalty. Leo, recovering his composure, waves off her apology, assuring her it is fine. Haru sighs in relief, glad to have avoided offense. As Haru reaches for the door handle, Leo calls out to her, shock evident in his voice as he realizes she is truly attempting to leave. Haru turns back, reiterating her worry for Mr. ELD. Leo's frustration mounts. He questions why she keeps obsessing over ELD. The atmosphere grows heavy as Leo declares he will not let her leave, his possessiveness flaring. Suddenly, magical energy crackles around Haru's hand as she tries to open the door, a visible manifestation of Leo's refusal to let her go. Leo commands her to go back to ELD, his words dripping with a mix of anger and desperation, though the text implies he is commanding her not to go back. Outside the villa gates, a cloaked figure approaches the guards, demanding entry to retrieve a guest. The guards, armed with halberds, block the path, informing the intruder that His Highness is entertaining a guest and cannot be disturbed. The intruder apologizes politely but insists on passing. The confrontation at the gate escalates. The guards warn the cloaked man, who is revealed to be ELD, that disobedience will be met with force. One guard tells him to go home, while another asserts that she should be there. ELD, maintaining a calm but threatening demeanor, states he would prefer to resolve the situation peacefully, but acknowledges that words may not suffice. Back inside, Haru finds herself paralyzed, her body refusing to move. She realizes Leo is using his magic to bind her. Leo stands behind her, his expression somber as he commands the guards outside to move aside, though the scene transitions to his internal monologue about his past. He reflects on his childhood, where his inability to control his immense magic caused trouble for those around him. Despite the chaos he caused, people always forgave him simply because he was a prince, dismissing his lack of control as something that couldn't be helped. He admits to possessing an unusually high amount of magic, even for royalty. Leo's flashback reveals a young, lonely boy. He felt invisible, as if no one truly saw him for who he was, only his title and power. He hated that isolation. He looks at Haru, his eyes searching hers, and recalls how she spoke to him without regard for his status, asking if she will truly see him. He acknowledges that despite him being a prince, she treated him differently. The magical pressure in the room intensifies. Haru struggles against the invisible bonds, noting that his magic is too strong and her efforts are no use. Desperate, she cries out for Mr. ELD, pleading for him to move or help her. Leo watches her struggle, a look of sorrow on his face as he whispers, "No." Haru refuses to give up, her internal monologue revealing her determination. She realizes the depth of her feelings, understanding that she loves ELD. Regret fills her as she thinks she should have confessed her feelings back then, fearing it might be too late. She screams ELD's name with all her might. Suddenly, the magical pressure binding Haru creates a visible shockwave as it is pushed back by an external force. Leo reacts with shock, sensing his magic being overpowered. Haru feels her body moving again as the binding spell breaks. Leo, sweating and alarmed, looks toward the window, realizing the interference came from outside. Haru rushes to the window, throwing it open, hope rising in her chest as she wonders if it is ELD. Outside, the massive iron gate of the villa has been completely destroyed, shattered by a dark force. Haru gasps, spotting a figure standing amidst the debris. It is ELD, but he is surrounded by a terrifying, dark miasma, the black stuff of his curse. ELD stands amidst the wreckage, his expression dark and intense as he demands to know where Haru is. Haru calls out to him from the window, but she is startled by his appearance. Leo, standing behind her, observes the scene with a mix of shock and realization, noting the terrifying nature of ELD's curse. ELD looks up, his eyes locking onto Haru, the dark curse marks visible on his neck and face. ELD extends a hand toward Haru, commanding her to come to him. He promises to catch her and tells her they are going home. Haru agrees without hesitation, preparing to jump. Leo frantically tries to stop her, warning that ELD is in no condition to catch her and that she will get hurt. Ignoring Leo's warning, Haru leaps from the window. ELD catches her effortlessly in his arms, the impact cushioned by his embrace. Dark energy swirls around them as he holds her in a bridal carry. ELD looks down at her, asking if she is okay, his voice filled with concern. Haru retorts that she should be the one asking him that, clearly worried about his state. Haru observes that the curse seems to have reacted to his negative emotions, causing the marks on his body to spread and worsen. ELD dismisses her concern, claiming he will get better in no time now that she is with him. He holds her close, his expression softening as he reassures her. Haru, overwhelmed with relief and affection, vows not to leave his side for the rest of the day. Leo watches them from the balcony, a bittersweet smile on his face. He comments on the warm affection being directed at Haru, finding it nice. He calls out to Haru, bidding her farewell and suggesting they meet again. Haru looks back, flustered, as Leo teases her one last time. He cheerfully announces that next time, he will kiss her. Haru blushes furiously, shocked by his boldness. Leo, resting his chin on his hand, looks bored by her reaction, wishing she would at least freak out a little more. He then orders his guards to leave. As they walk away, ELD asks Haru if she is fine and if Leo did anything to her. Haru denies it, but Leo's parting words about them definitely meeting again linger. She thanks ELD for coming to get her. Suddenly ELD questions her, noticing something. Haru nervously admits that Leo touched her neck a little, but quickly adds that she protected her lips. ELD's expression is unreadable as he processes this. ELD walks Haru home, the massive building looming in the background. He urges her to get inside quickly. Haru agrees, sensing his urgency. The dark curse energy spikes around ELD, manifesting as jagged black shapes. He calls her name repeatedly, his voice sounding strained. Inside the room, the atmosphere is heavy. ELD presses Haru down onto the bed, the dark curse mist swirling violently around them. He hovers over her, his eyes intense. ELD reveals his jealousy, asking if she didn't notice that he has already replaced the mark. Haru is confused. ELD points out that he gave her a hickey, asking why she keeps staring at her neck. ELD declares that if someone is going to steal her, he should steal all of her first. His possessiveness is fully unleashed. He touches her, his hands covered in the dark marks of the curse. He asks if she hates being touched by a cursed hand like his. Haru denies it softly, breathless. ELD kisses her neck, the curse marks visible on his skin. He questions if just anyone would do for her, noting how her body is reacting to his touch. He calls her cute, his voice dropping to a whisper. Haru, flushed and teary-eyed, denies his accusation that anyone would do. She confesses that she only wants him, Mr. ELD. ELD stops, apologizing and pulling back, fearing he went too far. Haru quickly reassures him that isn't true. Haru touches his shirt, admitting that she never properly told him how she felt. She confesses she likes him. ELD looks at her, stunned, asking her to repeat what she said. Haru gathers her courage and declares loudly that she really loves him. She stammers slightly but repeats the sentiment clearly. Haru explains that the reason she can feel happy even in this unknown, foreign world is because he treasures her. She touches her chest, cherishing the feeling of him thinking of her. ELD stares at her, his face flushing. ELD covers his face with his hand, overwhelmed by her words. He admits that he likes her. No, he loves her. Haru leans in, their foreheads touching. Haru continues, explaining that it is because of his care that she fell for him. ELD looks at her with intense affection, the curse marks seeming to fade slightly in the light of their shared emotion. Haru asks him to save her, acknowledging that he always does. ELD thanks her. They share a tender kiss, the dark atmosphere replaced by sparkles of light. Haru reflects internally that she finally got to tell ELD how she feels and is so glad. Later, they are resting on the bed. ELD notes that the curse marks have calmed down a lot thanks to her. Haru, hovering over him with concern, asks if he is all right and checks a spot on his body. ELD laughs, noting that she is more worried than he is. He notices a necklace she is wearing. Haru touches the necklace, admitting she hid it under her clothes because she didn't want it to get damaged. ELD realizes she was protecting it. ELD tells her that the necklace will keep him in check. He instructs her to wear it out in the open next time she sees Prince Leo. Haru apologizes, realizing the depth of his request. She asks about the stone, noting it is the same color as his eyes. ELD shyly confirms it is something like that. ELD pulls her close again, saying her name. He tells her he loves her, and Haru responds that she loves him too. He asks if he can say those words again. ELD looks at her with deep longing and asks her to be his lover. Haru embraces him, burying her face in his chest, and happily accepts, saying she would love to. They hold each other, finally united in their feelings. A moment of quiet intensity, centered on an intimate close-up where Lord ELD captures Haru's chin, their faces mere inches apart as a flush rises on her cheeks. The scene shifts to the elegant interior of a study, where sunlight streams through high windows, illuminating ELD as he reviews a document with a contemplative expression. His thoughts drift not to the papers in hand, but to the miraculous reality that he has secured a lover from another world. Sitting across from him, Haru gazes at him, her heart fluttering with disbelief that this striking, handsome man is truly her partner. The tranquility fractures when ELD suddenly pauses, sensing a disruption. He announces he must step out briefly, leaving Haru surprised as he explains that the headmaid was searching for Finn. Haru immediately acquiesces, bowing her head in understanding, though a pang of separation strikes her. ELD apologizes for the interruption to her own work, his manner polite yet distant as he excuses himself to attend to the matter. As the heavy doors close between them, Haru is left alone, murmuring his name into the silence, the solitude amplifying her lingering insecurities. Her mind retreats to a memory, a vivid recollection of intimacy that underscores the depth of their connection. In her thoughts, ELD embraces her tightly, his voice low and desperate as he confesses his longing to see her. The memory intensifies, shifting to a moment where their lips meet in a passionate, consuming kiss. ELD's need for her appears insatiable. He whispers that seeing her in the morning is insufficient, declaring his desire to remain perpetually by her side. The recollection shows him holding her possessively, admitting that he wants to keep kissing her, his affection overwhelming and absolute. Back in the present, the memory fades, leaving Haru flushed and trembling. ELD returns, breaking her reverie, and gently kisses her forehead, apologizing for asking too much of her previously. Haru stammers that she is happy to comply, but beneath her gratitude lies a darker current of anxiety. She compares this new life to her past, marveling at the sweetness of being lovers, yet a haunting phrase from her previous existence echoes in her mind: being with Haru is boring, so at least be useful. This trauma manifests as a crushing fear that ELD will eventually find her dull and discard her. Doubt consumes her. She questions if a man of his stature is truly content with someone like her, resolving that she cannot simply depend on him but must prove her worth through labor. Driven by this compulsion, Haru confronts ELD outside a grand building, the sky stretching wide above them. She asks if there is any other work she can undertake, insisting that purification duties are not enough to justify her presence. She pleads to be useful to him, her desire to serve stemming from a desperate need to secure her place by his side. ELD looks skeptical, touching his chin in thought, and warns her that the available tasks are arduous. He gestures toward the massive library archives, explaining that the job involves organizing the chaotic records. Haru's eyes widen at the sight of the library, shelves stretched to the ceiling, packed with disarrayed volumes. ELD coughs awkwardly, admitting the archives are ancient and the categorization system has collapsed, mixing years and subjects indiscriminately. He confesses that the disorder makes it difficult for him to locate materials and that he lacks the time to manage it himself. For Haru, this chaotic mess is a lifeline. She sees a chance to be indispensable. With burning determination, she declares she will handle it, boasting of her proficiency with odd jobs, effectively saving him from the drudgery. The narrative accelerates into a montage of grueling labor. Haru works relentlessly through the night, the library darkening as she sorts books into neat piles, categorizing centuries of knowledge. She pushes herself to the brink, muttering about pulling an all-nighter, a habit carried over from her previous life. Even as exhaustion sets in, she interrupts her manual labor to perform her purification duties with ELD, embracing him to cleanse him of miasma before rushing back to the stacks. As dawn approaches, she climbs ladders and hauls heavy tomes, cheering that she is halfway through, only to slump over a desk, her body finally betraying her will. The following day, ELD finds her in the hallway. He stops, his expression sharpening with concern as he observes her swaying on her feet. He bluntly states she is obviously sleep-deprived, but Haru attempts to brush it off, claiming she is fine. ELD confronts her, pointing out that the purification rituals alone place a heavy burden on her physical stamina, and combining them with manual labor is reckless. Haru forces a smile, arguing that she is accustomed to all-nighters from her old corporate job and that the work brings her reassurance. She clings to the logic that being the only one capable of purification gives her value, but her body fails her argument. Dizziness strikes her suddenly, her vision swimming. She stumbles, noting she hasn't felt this specific type of exhaustion in a long time. ELD moves instantly, catching her before she hits the floor. His voice is stern as he orders her to stop working immediately. He escalates his command, forbidding her from performing purification rituals for a while as well, determining that she needs absolute rest. Haru looks up at him in terror, her eyes wide with panic. To her, this cessation of utility is a death sentence for their relationship. ELD insists she does not need to organize the archives anymore, urging her to do nothing but recover. Haru resists, her trauma surfacing violently. She stammers that she can still work, her internal monologue chanting the toxic mantra that she is boring and must compensate by being useful. She tries to pull away, insisting she is fine, but her legs give out completely. As she collapses, her vision blurs, and she sees ELD reaching for her, his face etched with alarm. Her final conscious thought is a devastating certainty. If she is like this, weak and useless, she will surely be dumped again. Darkness claims her as ELD shouts her name. Haru awakens in a soft bed, the ceiling unfamiliar. Her memory rushes back, and dread washes over her. She realizes she collapsed and concludes she has messed up again, causing trouble for Mr. ELD. Tears prick her eyes as she tries to rise, apologizing instinctively to the empty air. She feels the weight of the word useless pressing down on her. Suddenly, a gloved hand gently touches her forehead. ELD is sitting by her bedside, watching her with a soft, relieved expression. He asks if she is awake, his presence calming the room. Haru looks at him, whispering his name. ELD explains that she slept for quite a while and that her collapse was due to severe sleep deprivation. He offers her water, his manner attentive and caring. Haru shrinks back, apologizing profusely for the inconvenience she has caused. ELD strokes her hair, but Haru interrupts the tenderness with a heartbreaking question. She asks him, "Aren't I boring?" She lists her perceived faults. She is clumsy, not physically beautiful, and she collapses and causes trouble. She asks why he pushes himself so hard for someone who offers so little in return. LD listens, his expression shifting from concern to a dark, simmering anger. He demands to know who told her such things, that being with him does her no good or that she is unworthy. ELD presses her for a name, his voice dropping to a dangerous register as he vows to throw the culprit straight into the dungeon. Haru, realizing his intent, timidly explains that the person who said those words exists back in her old world. ELD halts, frustrated that his vengeance cannot cross dimensions. He curses softly, realizing there is nothing he can do to punish the source of her pain. Haru, seeing his fierce defense of her, feels a wave of realization wash over her fear. She understands now that ELD is always on her side. She recalls that it has been this way since they first met. ELD turns back to her, his anger fading into earnest affection. He tells her she is already plenty charming just as she is. When Haru looks doubtful, he insists she should think more kindly of herself. He smiles gently, explaining that her hardworking nature, the very trait she abuses to prove her worth, is part of what makes her attractive to him. Haru blushes deeply, overwhelmed by his validation. LD leans in closer, his gaze intense. He vows to cherish her more than anyone else in any world, countering her inability to cherish herself. He wraps his arms around her, pulling her into a tight embrace. Resting his chin on her shoulder, he admits that he is likely more swept up in this love than she is, revealing his own vulnerability and depth of feeling. Haru, flushed and teary-eyed, thinks that he is being too sweet to her. Emboldened by his confession, Haru looks up at him. She asks him to cherish her, explicitly inviting his affection. LD replies instantly that of course, he will, finding her request unbearably cute. He captures her lips in a kiss that is no longer just comforting but deeply passionate. The atmosphere in the room shifts, becoming heavy with desire. ELD breaks the kiss to ask if he can touch her more, seeking permission to escalate their intimacy. Haru nods, giving her consent. LD kisses her neck, his touch traveling over her, but he pauses as he notices her reaction. He realizes she is trembling, her breath hitching in a way that suggests she has been suppressing her own desires for a long time. He pulls back slightly to look at her face, asking if she has been holding back all this time. Haru admits it, a small, shy confession. LD realizes that until now, she had been satisfied with the purification kisses, viewing them as a duty or a sufficient crumb of affection, while suppressing her own needs. Now, however, the barrier is broken. They lie together on the bed, limbs entangled, the air thick with tension. Haru, her face red, stammers a question, asking if they should go all the way. It is a momentous offer, a final step in their physical union. ELD looks down at her, seeing her vulnerability and her eagerness. But he stops. He gazes at her with a mixture of desire and restraint. He decides against it. He explains that he wants to wait until her feelings catch up to his, implying he wants her to engage with him as an equal partner who values herself, not just someone offering her body to be useful or because she feels she owes him. He gently declares they will wait a little longer, prioritizing her emotional healing over immediate gratification. The narrative concludes on this note of tender patience, solidifying the depth of his respect and love for her. Haru held the cracked, multifaceted stone up to the light, her gaze fixed on the dull, gray surface that once pulsed with magic. The necklace resting against her collarbone remained still, mirroring the dormancy of the artifact in her hand. This stone, a remnant of the journey that had transported her across dimensions, now appeared as nothing more than a lifeless pebble, its purpose seemingly exhausted. The morning sun filtered through the grand windows of the estate, illuminating Haru as she stood lost in thought, only for the tranquility to break when Mr. leaned in, his dark hair cascading over his forehead as he pressed a tender kiss to her lips. Haru flushed, her cheeks tinting pink at the sudden intimacy, causing her to stammer a denial that lacked conviction. LD observed her reaction, his eyes narrowing slightly with playful scrutiny as he questioned if her hesitation stemmed from dislike. He teased her about the propriety of a kiss first thing in the morning, enjoying the way she struggled to maintain her composure in his presence. Her voice trailed off, murmuring his name, unable to mount a proper defense against his affection. LD pulled back but kept his gaze locked on hers, declaring that every day since her arrival in this world had been filled with happiness. He leaned in again, his expression softening into genuine adoration, and proposed that they continue this ritual until she grew accustomed to the affection, effectively silencing her embarrassment with the promise of repetition. Later, in the grand hallway, they held Haru close, their bodies swaying gently as if to a silent melody. He confessed a longing for this time together to stretch into eternity, his arm wrapped securely around her waist. Haru, resting her hands on his chest, cautioned him not to overdo it, though her request to assist with his work again revealed her own desire to remain by his side. Suddenly, a pulse of light erupted from Haru's hand, drawing her attention downward in shock. The magic stone, which she had believed dormant, glowed with an intense, revitalized luminescence, casting harsh shadows against her palm. She stared at the object, recalling it as the very catalyst that had transported her to this realm. The stone had been stored away in the mansion, presumed powerless, yet now it hummed with energy that contradicted its previous state. Haru's mind raced, trying to rationalize why it would activate on this specific morning, wondering if a residual fragment of power had lingered deep within its core. Doubt crept in as she considered the timing. It seemed impossible, yet the undeniable glow suggested a sudden, volatile awakening. LD stood behind her, his demeanor shifting instantly from the warmth of the morning to a cold, analytical dread. He theorized that the stone intended to return her to her original world. His voice took on a bitter edge, masking his fear with cynicism as he chided her for falling for a little kindness, calling her foolish for not anticipating this potential separation. He mocked her visible distress, asking if she truly couldn't handle the reality of the situation. Haru faltered, unable to form a coherent rebuttal. ELD pressed the issue, reminding her that she had originally needed to return to her own world, forcing her to confront the conflict between her past life and her present desires. Haru stammered, admitting the truth of his words but struggling to articulate the change in her heart. LD, retreating behind a mask of indifference, congratulated her coldly, instructing her to keep the stone close since the transfer could happen at any moment. Haru watched him, her heart sinking at his apparent detachment, wondering if he truly didn't care that she was on the verge of leaving. She whispered his name, seeking a crack in his armor. LD turned his face away, shadows obscuring his eyes, the sharp lines of his jaw set in tension. He avoided her gaze, hiding the turmoil that ravaged his composure. Moments later, the atmosphere shifted as they walked through the estate grounds. LD, having regained a semblance of control, suggested a walk, though the suggestion carried an undercurrent of desperation. They strolled through the lush gardens, the scenery vibrant with blooming roses and serene waters, yet the air between them remained heavy. Haru walked slightly ahead, confused by the sudden change in activity. ELD remarked that he still hadn't shown her around this specific area, using the tour as a pretext to keep her within reach. Haru turned to him, questioning his intent, only to realize the extremity of his coping mechanism. A silver chain glittered in the sunlight, linking Haru's wrist directly to ELD's. They were wearing handcuffs. ELD lifted his shackled hand, inspecting the metal with a dark, possessive satisfaction. He explained calmly that this measure was to ensure she was never left alone. Haru stared at the bind, bewildered by the physical manifestation of his refusal to let her go. ELD brought her shackled wrist to his lips, kissing the skin near the metal cuff with a reverence that bordered on worship. He murmured that the stone might try to take her away by herself, a prospect he refused to entertain. He confessed that her calmness had unnerved him, making him believe she didn't care about their separation. But now, faced with the possibility of her vanishing to a place out of his reach, his resolve hardened. He declared that if the stone took her, he would go too, binding his fate irrevocably to hers. Haru watched him, her cheeks flushing at the intensity of his vow, realizing that beneath his composed exterior lay a terrifying fear of loss. They stood by the edge of a vast lake, the water dark and still. LD stared into the distance, his thoughts spiraling into morbidity. He mused aloud that if the curse was going to kill him anyway, his heart might not withstand the agony of her leaving him behind. He glanced at the water, darkly joking that perhaps he should throw himself into the lake, referencing a local legend that anyone who fell in was never found. Haru cried out, horrified by his words, begging him not to speak of such things. LD quickly retracted the statement, claiming he was kidding, but the despair in his eyes betrayed the truth. He admitted that he kept thinking awful things, his mind sieged by the prospect of a future without her. Haru looked at him, seeing the vulnerability he tried to hide. She realized that if her potential departure made him this uneasy, she had to question her own motivations. She asked herself if she really had a reason to go back that was worth this pain. LD covered his face with his gloved hand, his voice breaking as he admitted he was scared of losing her. Haru contemplated the stone's nature. LD had mentioned it possessed only a last bit of power. This was the critical juncture. To stay meant abandoning everything from her previous life, her home, her history, to live permanently in this world. If she missed this chance, the stone would drain, and she could never return. She questioned if she had the resolve to make such a final, irreversible choice. Suddenly, the decision was forced upon her. Haru looked down at her arm and gasped. Her skin was turning transparent, the garden's scenery visible through her fading flesh. The stone had activated. LD reacted instantly, reaching for the stone, but his hand passed through the space where the object should have been solid. He clicked his tongue in frustration, realizing he couldn't touch it. The stone reacted only to Haru, initiating the transfer sequence. Haru watched her own body losing substance, fear gripping her as she realized she was disappearing from this world. LD screamed her name, lunging forward to embrace her. He wrapped his arms around her fading form, burying his face in her neck, refusing to let the magic separate them. Haru clung to him, tears welling in her eyes, terrified of going alone and never seeing him again. The world around them seemed to blur as Haru's physical form became increasingly insubstantial. She looked at ELD, asking if this was really goodbye. The handcuffs rattled as they held onto each other, the metal link the only solid thing connecting her fading existence to his reality. ELD stared into her eyes, his expression desperate, swearing that no matter what happened, he loved her. He promised this love was eternal. Tears streamed down Haru's face. In that suspended moment between worlds, she made her choice. She cried out that her heart belonged only to him. The declaration hung in the air, a counterspell to the dimensional pull. She affirmed that she wanted only Mr. ELD. With a surge of determination, Haru realized that no matter what she had to give up, her place was here. The stone, responding to her will or perhaps discarded by her own hand, flew from her grasp. It arced through the air, splashing into the waters of the lake. A blinding flash of light engulfed the garden, whitening out the trees and the water. The energy surged and then dissipated. Silence returned to the garden. Haru opened her eyes, blinking against the lingering brightness. She looked at her hands, then at ELD. He was staring at her, stunned. He reached out, cupping her face, and whispered that she was not transparent anymore. Her body had regained its solidity, the transfer had been aborted. ELD called her name, his voice trembling with a mixture of relief and confusion. He reminded her that she was supposed to go back to her world, asking if this outcome was truly okay. Haru smiled, tears of happiness clinging to her lashes. She told him she had found something more important than any reason to return. She explained that instead of living a normal life in her old world, she wanted to keep smiling with him by her side. She asked if it was okay for her to live in the world where he existed. LD's hands shook as he held hers, the tremors betraying the depth of his emotion. He brought her knuckles to his lips, closing his eyes as he thanked her, confirming that of course it was okay. Haru noted his trembling hands, and he admitted he still couldn't believe she was really there with him. He asked what he could do to believe it, needing a physical anchor to ground him in this new reality. The scene shifted to the intimacy of their bedroom. The handcuffs were gone, replaced by the desperate, heated touch of lovers reunited on the brink of loss. LD hovered over Haru on the bed, his shirt unbuttoned, revealing the dark markings of his curse on his skin. He gazed down at her with a hunger born of near loss, declaring that right now, he wanted all of her. He needed her heart and her body to verify her existence, to ensure she was real and not a fading dream. Haru looked up at him, surrendering to his touch, ready to prove with every breath that she was here to stay. A tender yet intense moment between the two lovers, as Mr. ELD holds Haru close, their faces mere inches apart. His dark hair falls over his forehead, contrasting with the visible, ink-like curse marks staining his neck, while Haru looks up at him, her cheeks flushed with anticipation and nervousness. ELD's voice drops low as he declares his absolute desire, stating unequivocally that he wants all of her. Haru audibly gulps, her throat tightening in a mix of anxiety and arousal. She remains silent, prompting ELD to press further, his gaze piercing as he clarifies exactly what he means by possessing all of her. The scene shifts to the bed, where ELD looms over Haru, his shirt unbuttoned and hanging loosely from his frame. He gently but firmly separates her legs, his hands sliding intimately along her thigh, causing Haru to jolt and let out a startled gasp. ELD observes her reaction closely, noting with palpable relief that her body is no longer transparent. He exhales, expressing his gratitude that her physical form has solidified, confirming she is anchored to this plane of existence. Haru, still reeling from the sensation of his touch, repeats the word transparent in her mind, her heart racing. Haru's thoughts drift inward, recalling how ELD has been consumed with worry over the possibility of her disappearing entirely. She feels a pang of guilt for causing him such distress, realizing that even now, his actions are driven by a desperate need to confirm her presence. Suddenly, she snaps back to the present reality, realizing she is getting flustered all on her own while he watches her. She looks up at him, questioning his anxiety, asking if he truly believes she might vanish. LD sits before her, now fully shirtless, revealing the extent of the dark, smoke-like curse marks that sprawl across his chest and shoulders. He looks down, his expression somber and vulnerable, admitting that his worry is not a lie. He asks if she, too, is nervous, acknowledging the tension hanging thick in the air between them. His gaze intensifies, the dark marks on his skin seeming to pulse as he leans in closer, whispering that if she dislikes this even a little, she must tell him immediately. He confesses that a part of him is fighting a violent urge to ravish her right then and there, a primal need threatening to overwhelm his restraint. He warns her that he is currently maintaining control, but only just barely, and can still stop himself if she commands it. Haru listens to his confession, her resolve hardening as she processes his words. She looks him in the eyes and gives him the permission he seeks, telling him plainly that he does not have to stop. She urges him not to hold back anymore, effectively shattering the dam of his restraint. ELD accepts her invitation instantly, closing the distance to capture her lips in a kiss far more intense than any they have shared before. The panel captures the ferocity of the act, his tongue invading her mouth, moving with a hunger that draws a muffled cry from Haru. She realizes in a haze of sensation that all their previous kisses were merely chaste preludes compared to this raw, devouring passion. She clings to him, her internal monologue noting that he wasn't even serious until now. He pulls back slightly, breathless, and warns her to brace herself, signaling the end of any gentle preliminaries. Haru wonders frantically what is about to happen to her, her mind racing as sensations overwhelm her. His hands roam over her body, touching sensitive areas that elicit sharp, involuntary cries of pleasure and protest from her. She arches her back, light surrounding her form as he stimulates her, the pleasure becoming nearly unbearable. ELD's face is buried against her skin, his mouth working expertly, causing Haru to plead with him to stop sucking, though her body betrays her words. Haru, overwhelmed by the sensory overload, stammers, asking if he has already stopped, only for him to resume with renewed vigor. She gasps, feeling a throbbing sensation that makes her feel as though she is going crazy. She tries to articulate a request for him to stop, but the pleasure is too immense, conflicting with her verbal protests. LD, hovering over her, tells her she should remember this moment well. He states matter-of-factly that no man in the world would stop when she says such cute things, implying her reactions only fuel his drive. ELD shifts his attention lower, observing her body's reaction with a possessive satisfaction. He points out that she is visibly ready, indicating the wetness and heat radiating from her. He speaks of reaching a deep place that fingers cannot touch, asking if she can feel the anticipation building within her. He confesses that he has been waiting for this day, a day where he can anchor her to this world permanently. He explains his motivation, his voice thick with emotion. He wants to connect with her to the deepest depths so that she will never disappear alone again. This act is a binding ritual for him, a way to ensure she cannot escape from him. As he positions himself, the black curse marks on his skin seem to flare up, reacting to the intensity of his emotions. Haru notices the curse resonating, the heavy darkness swirling around him. ELD admits his feelings are too heavy, causing the curse to react, but he declares he cannot stop anymore. He asserts his need to make her his quickly, vowing to proceed even if she were to refuse, driven by a desperate urgency. He kisses her again, silencing any potential protest. Haru, however, does not refuse. Instead, she thinks to herself that she does not find his heavy love unpleasant at all. In fact, she admits to herself that she is happy. She realizes that she has always wanted to be someone's special person, to be the sole focus of someone's world. She wonders what it feels like to be special, realizing that she, too, has been waiting for a day like this. With tears pricking her eyes, Haru calls out his name and confesses her love. She begs him to come to her, fully accepting him and his darkness. LD, moved by her admission, returns the confession, telling her he loves her before the scene fades into a depiction of their union. Later, the couple lies entangled in the sheets, sweating and breathless. LD looks down at Haru with concern, asking if she is okay. Haru insists she is fine, but ELD cautions her not to move yet. He admits that he cannot move right now either, his face flushed and strained. He describes the sensation of being inside her, stating that it feels too good, overwhelming his senses. He realizes that the purification power residing within Haru is incredibly strong, and being deeply connected to her feelings is enhancing the sensation to an almost paralyzing degree. LD buries his face in the pillow, trembling, realizing that he is the only one being pleasured in this moment due to his oversensitivity. Haru, seemingly recovering faster, asks Innocent if it is okay to move now, expressing her happiness. LD, shocked by her composure, looks at her and drops a stunning revelation. Only half of him is currently inside her. Haru's eyes widen in comedic shock as she processes this information, asking half, in disbelief. She mentally calculates that even though it already feels like so much, there is still more to come. LD immediately apologizes, sensing her apprehension, but promises to make her feel good to the very depths, regardless of the size. Haru, blushing furiously, then shyly, admits that she is a virgin. LD reacts with a start, eyes widening. He swiftly promises to do his best and Haru asks him to be gentle. The scene transitions to the exterior of the mansion as the night progresses. Back inside, Haru is breathless, reassuring him she is okay. ELD apologizes again, thinking he was holding back but realizing his control slipped. He asks anxiously if she is tired of him being too heavy, referring to both his physical weight and his intense emotional baggage. Haru denies this vehemently, shouting, "Not at all." She cups his face, telling him she wants to accept his true feelings, all of them. Haru declares her resolve to stay with Mr. ELD no matter what happens. She has decided to live in this world, abandoning her past life to be by his side. She thanks him for choosing her, effectively anchoring herself to his reality. He kisses her forehead tenderly, and she asks him to take care of her for a long time. In the aftermath, as they embrace, Haru notices a lingering look of anxiety on ELD's face and asks him about it. He deflects, simply telling her he will make her happy. The narrative shifts abruptly to a scene of political intrigue within the mansion hallway. LD, now fully dressed in a shirt and trousers, stands with his arms crossed, listening to a report from a long-haired subordinate wearing glasses. The subordinate asks if it was truly all right not to tell Lady Haru the truth. He reports that the magic stone that fell into the lake still has not been found. ELD listens intently as the subordinate continues, discussing an investigation into a witch and the reason why Haru came to this world. The subordinate notes that the magic surrounding Haru felt similar to the magic of the witch who originally cursed ELD. ELD grimly acknowledges this, noting that the witch is dangerous. Returning to the bedroom, ELD sits on the edge of the bed where Haru is now sleeping peacefully. He watches her slumber, his expression contemplative and shadowed. He admits internally that there are so many things he does not understand, specifically pondering why Haru came to this world in the first place. He leans down, gripping her hand tightly, and vows that she is his now. He swears a silent oath that he will not let anyone take her away, his protective instinct flaring as the curse marks on his neck remain visible, a testament to the danger and power that surrounds them. The morning sun filters through the curtains, illuminating the intimate aftermath of the night before. Haru stirs from her sleep, letting out a soft sound as she wakes to find ELD already watching her. He greets her with a gentle, "Good morning," his voice low and intimate. ELD hovers over her, his dark hair falling across his forehead, and asks if she slept well. Before she can fully answer, he embraces her tightly, burying his face in her hair. He confesses with a hint of frustration that he wanted to wake up before her to watch her sleep, declaring this the happiest morning he has ever had. The atmosphere shifts as ELD's hand wanders, his touch lingering on her skin. He asks if it is all right to continue for a little while, despite the early hour. Haru flushes, stammering his name, but ELD reassures her that he won't go all the way. He checks on her physical state, asking if she is sore, to which Haru surprisingly admits she is okay. Suddenly, a sharp knock on the door shatters the moment. Finn's voice cuts through the wood, announcing that it is time for Lord ELD to get ready. ELD curses under his breath, his expression darkening with annoyance. He tells Haru not to worry, admitting he desperately wanted to stay a little longer. He calls out to Finn that he will be there shortly. LD lingers, hugging Haru tightly, the black curse marks on his shoulder clearly visible against his pale skin. He confesses that he does not want to be apart from her and whimsically suggests taking the day off just to keep holding her forever. Haru, though flushed and happy, reminds him that his work is important and urges him to go. LD relents, his mood visibly lifting as he feels purified by her presence. He agrees to do his best at work because she asked him to. He takes one last longing look at her, wanting to imprint her image in his mind before finally departing. Left alone in the room, Haru collapses back onto the bed, screaming into the sheets as the reality of the situation crashes down on her. She processes the fact that she finally had sex with Mr. ELD. Her heart pounds violently in her chest. Later, as she bathes and dresses, her mind replays the sensations of the night. She touches her lips, recalling the intensity of his touch, admitting to herself that she never thought she could feel that much pleasure. Although it was her first time, it felt overwhelmingly good. A shadow of insecurity creeps in as she concludes that ELD must be incredibly skilled at this. She compares his apparent experience to her own lack thereof, feeling a pang of inadequacy on what should be a happy day. Haru moves to the drawing room, only to be startled by a cheerful greeting from Prince Leo. He stands there with a playful grin, immediately assuring her he isn't going to kidnap her again. Leo informs her that he knows Lord ELD has gone out for a town inspection. He admits he wanted some free time and decided to have tea with Haru to hear all her stories. They sit for tea, and Leo flaunts his vast information network, revealing he already knows Haru has decided to stay in this world permanently. He chuckles, noting that while his prediction that she would need his help to leave was off, he is still well informed. He offers that if she ever changes her mind and wants to go home, he can still help her. Leo's gaze sharpens as he points a finger at her neck. He bluntly observes a hickey and asks if she had sex with ELD. Haru freezes, her face erupting in a blush. Leo takes her reaction as confirmation. He casually remarks on how experienced ELD is, mentioning that ELD has been with all sorts of women until now. Haru's spirit visibly droops at this confirmation. Leo explains the reasoning. ELD was apparently testing different women to see if their love or healing soul could break his curse. Haru accepts this information with a heavy heart, her internal fears confirmed. ELD is experienced, unlike her. Later that day, ELD returns and finds Haru standing alone in the garden gazebo. He approaches her with an intense expression, immediately asking if Prince Leo did anything to her. He reveals he heard about the visit from Finn. Haru attempts to mask her turmoil, thinking that if she worries about his past, it will only trouble him. She turns to him with a forced smile, claiming they just had tea and talked. ELD steps closer, sensing her evasion. He demands to know what they discussed, asking if it is something she cannot tell him. Under his piercing gaze, Haru crumbles. She stammering asks about him having sex with lots of different women. ELD freezes, letting out a shocked, "Huh?" Haru hurriedly explains that Prince Leo explained the reason, that it was to break the curse, and acknowledges that the past cannot be changed. She forces herself to say she doesn't really mind it that much and asks him to believe her. ELD's expression shifts from shock to intensity. He grabs her, pulling her close. He rejects her acceptance, telling her that getting angry is not. He cuts himself off and demands to know if she isn't angry. He grips her hand tightly, telling her not to just accept it. He wants her to be mad, to feel frustrated. He leans in, his forehead against hers, and confesses his own vulnerability. He declares that he was the one who wanted to be with her. He admits that he wants to be the only one to see her teary eyes. He questions if he is the only one who is this jealous, asserting that his feelings are heavier than hers. Haru looks up at him, tears welling in her eyes. She denies his claim that she doesn't mind. She admits that knowing he has been with all kinds of people makes her feel small. She confesses that she didn't want him to think she was a bother. But finally she lets the truth spill out. She is frustrated. She buries her face in his chest, embarrassed, and specifies exactly what bothers her. She hates knowing that other women might know the specific places where he teases her meanly in the middle. She hates the thought of other women seeing the expressions and hearing the voice he makes when they are intimate. She clenches her fist, declaring that knowing how good it feels makes her hate the thought of anyone else experiencing it. She wishes she was the only one who knew. LD stares at her, stunned, before a look of relief and affection washes over his face. He calls her shameless for saying all that but admits he must take her words sincerely. He vows to never hold anyone but her ever again. However, he pulls back slightly to make one correction. He looks her deep in the eyes and states that he has never teased anyone meanly in the middle, like that except for her. He claims he used to be more restrained. He admits that he has never felt that much pleasure before either, which is why he loses control with her. Haru blushes furiously as she understands the implication. To settle the lingering jealousy for both of them, LD proposes a solution. He wants to hold her again tonight. He suggests that if they hold each other more often, the jealousy might settle down. He brings his face close to hers, asking if she dislikes that idea. Haru, breathless, admits she doesn't dislike it at all.